What's going on, guys? It's the VE Movie News crew here once again with another list breakdown video. We are going through mental breakdowns right now, if you ask me, with the way the world is. So we just want to give some people some content. Maybe you haven't seen some of these movies. So you can treat this as a comic book. If you've not been into comic book movies, treat this as the top 10 movies you need to see from us.
There you go.
And obviously this is in no particular. Well, I want to say it's in no particular order. We did put it in an order, but you could honestly reorder these in any way you like, and we'd still probably agree with it to a point.
Exactly.
There's a few on my list that I won't accept being out of the top 5, but that's it. No, like, I mean, that's not, and that's fine. But I mean, it's like, it's just a personal opinion thing, like I said. But at the end of the day, we're just here to bring this list to you guys today. And without further ado, Charlie, who do you got at number 10 on your list?
Yeah, so number 10, leading me off, is one of the first comic book films I ever really fell in love with, and that is Watchmen, 2009 film, directed by the one and only Zack Snyder. If you know Zack Snyder, you have an opinion about him one way or the other, right? He's one of those kind of guys. Just Watchmen, that was one of the first comic book movies I just ever really felt deep into. I got the books, I ended up reading the big old book about it, big old comic book.
Okay. So then I will ask you this: based on reading the actual Watchmen graphic novels, like, what, in your opinion, who is like the best character? Because personally, I think I've always loved Ozymandias just because he's like a powerhouse, but like,
Yeah.
and like also like manipulates everything behind the scenes in every version of the Watchmen. But like, who did you really connect with? Because everyone always connects with somebody different, I've noticed.
Mr. Walter Kovacs. Rose.
Okay.
I'm forgetting how to say it. I'm blanking on his name, and I haven't heard.
Is that Rorschach? Is that Rorschach?
There it is.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So I don't know the names because, like I said, Watchmen. I actually said this to you just like before we started recording, but like I actually haven't even seen the Watchmen movie because I'm one of those purist people with Watchmen. There's several people that have seen the movies but just don't like them, and I don't want to be like I enjoy the idea of the Watchmen as DC characters ever since they became DC characters, and I don't want
moving and stuff.
Yeah, and I enjoy those characters so much. I don't know that I want to see them try and even take a shot at live action because it just seems so tough to me to get that vibe. Apparently, the TV show did it really well, which I might have to give that a look. But
I'm counting on that point. Even though this is my number 10, I haven't actually gotten around to seeing the HBO's Watchmen TV series.
Maybe that's something we should do a review on. Maybe
one of these quarantine things, right?
Yeah, well, maybe we'll both hit that and do a review of it. That's right up our alley. So
what do you got?
We'll take a look at that,
10, Mr. Duke of Derps.
So at number 10, I have James Wan's Aquaman. So
okay.
So a lot of people are gonna be like, "Wait, Aquaman at number 10? I loved Aquaman. It's one of the best DCEU movies." That's why it's at number 10. So for the most part, for me, like, I actually included way more DC movies on here than I expected. But truthfully,
hey, kicking us both off, DC.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because like I didn't expect things to be like so DC heavy for me, but then I remembered every now and then I've actually always more identified with the DC characters anyway. I've talked about that on our previous shows. Like I've always just enjoyed the DC comics more. I'm a huge Green Lantern fan, and my favorite character in comics is Nightwing. So I guess I would be on the DC side if I had to choose, but I also have a lot of characters in Marvel that I love. But yeah, so Aquaman for me, it was the turning point that the DCEU needed. Wonder Woman was a great start, but it even had issues. But I think this movie is really when things started to shift toward the good and toward the other movies we'll get on this list. Spoilers now, Wonder Woman is higher on my list. I won't say where, but it is higher on my list. And so a lot of what I just said about that movie not doing as good as much as Aquaman to turn things around, I'll just say that now. That's true, but at the same time, both movies are obviously part of that turning point when DC started to get good. So at number 9, it hurts me to put this movie this low, but I'm glad it made my list either way.
Okay.
Number 9, I have Birds of Prey. So, and this is going to obviously be like a hot take because everyone like disliked that movie, it seems like, and I just don't understand it. And we're not going to sit here and try to defend our opinions on that because obviously the majority of people didn't like it.
If you're interested.
Yeah, if you'd like to take a look at our review and see what the reasons why we liked it, maybe you can compare that to the reasons why you didn't like it. And from what I've been able to see of other people's reviews, like all the things we enjoyed about the movie, they said it lacked. And so I'm just like, I don't know what you were looking for. This wasn't going to be a 10 out of 10 movie. If you were going in looking to see the next best DCEU movie, then I think you were like selling yourself a little down the river there. You were never going to get what you wanted out of this. Just like people, like if you wanted Justice League, if you didn't expect it to be an incoherent mess based on what the previous 3 or 4 movies before then had been, like in terms of a story that was overarching, then I don't know. Like it's like people were like, "Oh, Justice League should have been where everything was fixed." It's like no, they were way too in deep at that point. There was nobody that could have saved that. I mean, maybe somebody could have, maybe I don't know, but at the same time, no one thought you could save Suicide Squad, and James Gunn is giving it a try. So, so at number 9, Charlie, what do you got on your list?
It's funny you mentioned Mr. James Gunn. 2014, Guardians of the Galaxy, directed by James Gunn, is my number 9. This movie just, to me, ending the DC streak, first one for the MCU in here.
Right.
To me, this movie just, I love it. I love it so much. The comedy hits. It feels emotional. Chris Pratt is Peter Quill, Star-Lord. Batista. Hey man, when he got Groot, the good Groot, that is the Groot we all like right there. We are Groot. Yeah. So you can't go wrong with Guardians at number 9 for me.
Absolutely.
Also, another side note about Guardians.
Yeah, go ahead.
The music choice.
Oh yeah.
You're just rocking out all movie.
There's a reason why they sold like a vinyl album of the record that was the soundtrack, because it was like James Gunn. I guess I heard this story. I don't know if this is true. Someone can fact check me on this if they want, but I believe I heard a story that before he does he puts together any scripts or anything like that, he selects all the songs he's going to use. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes sense and then he fits them in where they make sense in the film. And that's genius filmmaking to me if that's the case. Because you're accounting, because not every filmmaker accounts for that kind of thing. You know, sometimes they bring in specifically a composer so they can be like, yeah, this scene's really intense. I need some music for that. And then they give them that. Or they give them more direction than that, obviously, because they've been involved in stage stuff probably in their lives too, you know. But not the point. Like, yeah. So, yeah, you did end the DC streak. That's true. That's true. So at number 8 on your list, Charlie, what do you got?
The DC is back on its feet. I get number 8. I got Shazam.
Okay.
One of my favorite movies of 2019. David Sandberg is the director of Shazam. I don't know, man. Just the whole Shazam family. I love the story of it. To me, I was totally into it. And again, I think this DC was struggling for a little bit. Up until Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and then Shazam. Really, DC was struggling a little bit in the critics' eyes, and with Shazam. I don't want to. Shazam really hit critically.
Yeah, there's a box office where Shazam failed. Yeah,
for them exactly, but the box office failed. So one of my favorite movies of last year. The DC is back. So DC has 4-1 right now.
So it's about to be 5-1 because at number 8 I have Man of Steel. Okay. So it's not my favorite movie in the DCU. I liked them both significantly more than both Birds of Prey and Aquaman. Obviously, all 3 movies have their issues. They've been discussed at length. If you need explanations to why the parts of those movies don't work, there's a million reviews on the internet for you to go look at, including some of ours. But although on the ours you won't really get that part, you'll just get the things we liked. But yeah, I mean, I think personally, Man of Steel is the second or third best DC movie that's been made since the DCEU was attempted, and I think all the problems of movies like Justice League and Suicide Squad, this movie never even had those issues. And granted, it was just essentially a character study on Superman, but it was a really well told one, and one that I thought deserved more recognition than it ultimately got because people panned it critically initially. So, but yeah,
Zack Snyder directed film on our list.
It's true. It's very true. It's not going to be the last. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's not going to be the last. Actually, let me take a look. Maybe.
Hey.
Nope. It's not going to be the last. No, it will be the last.
Never mind. With number 7 here. At number 7, I am back to the MCU. I have Spiderman Homecoming. Really?
Okay. I really enjoyed that. I did not make my list.
If you know me, big Spider-Man fan. We got the little Spidey right here, little dog. Big Spider-Man fan myself, and Tom Holland portraying Peter Parker. I loved it. In this movie, some people say there's a little bit too much Iron Man in it, and he just feels like Iron Man's little buddy. I mean, I can get those takes, but to me, they did a good job of really making Spider-Man feel like an actual, a young high school student.
Yeah, you get that part of the comics where they always start in his life, where he starts off as a teenager who's growing up and going,
He doesn't
Um,
feel like a post college guy playing in high school.
yeah, right.
It's
Which is, but to be truthful, most of the the time you see Spider-Man in the comics, he is usually college age, but that's usually because he's been in the whatever cycle of storylines has been going around for a couple of arcs. So you can say, oh yeah, it's been a couple of years, he aged, blah blah blah, time skips because comics can do that. Whereas in movies, it has to be more grounded. So you either have to start him at 20 plus, or you have to start him as a teenager, and both are kind of endeavors because one requires you to make a big leap at the beginning of saying, okay, he's an adult when he gets his powers
oh
now.
yeah.
The other leap being that you have to say, okay, now I have to follow this franchise for 4 years until he looks like he's in his 20s. And then Tom Holland doesn't age at all. So you're like, wait.
And Michael Keaton's portrayal as Vulture is one of my favorite MCU villains.
Top 5 MCU villain. We need to do that list. Let's do the top 5 MCU villains later this week or something like that.
There you
But
go. Yeah.
look out for that one if we decide to do that. But and we can do one for the DC as well. I mean, we could just do top 10 comic book villains and include both. But although DC might be a little short on that list, but either way, we can make that work. Maybe we do top 3 DC villains, but either way. So yeah, we're at number 7 on the list, and at number 7, I have probably my favorite singular solo, and it's technically not a solo outing because it includes other heroes, but technically solo movie is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So the MCU strikes back, and
back to back, picking up dubs at 7 for us.
yeah, so I love this movie. It doesn't feel like a comic book movie to me. Yes, there's comic book characters in it, but this is a spy movie. This is a spy movie. This is an action thriller. This is everything that I wanted out of it. This to me, I was like, when this came out, and then the next movie I think that came out after this was Thor 2. I could be wrong about the release date order there, but whatever came out next after this, it was not the same level of intensity as this. And I was like, okay, I liked this movie, but Captain America: The Winter Soldier, why are we not still talking about that? Because that film, in 2014, you had a couple of comic book movies that came out that year. But I think, honestly, The Winter Soldier is the one that cleaned up the most. Like, I don't remember what it did at the box office. I know it was really well received critically, and it's probably, like I said, my favorite Captain America movie of the bunch. And, yeah, and I really love Captain America 1. Weirdly, Civil War has aged poorly for me. Not a bad movie.
That's fair. I feel like,
but
it's
kind of like I've heard people saying recently it's kind of like a filler movie for the big stuff coming later, and it doesn't really add. The only thing that really affects is a few scenes later in Endgame. Really,
yeah, like the fight at the end is kind of.
By the time it matters, they have to just get back as friends. So like the impact of Civil War, which in the comics really kind of screws things up for a couple of years, on the landscape of superheroes. But that's the thing. You can't really do Civil War in live action. They tried to do their best, but the most you can get is a couple heroes fighting each other. All right. So I just clicked my list away. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. And at number 6 on my list. So you say you're a big Spider-Man fan. I am also a big Spider-Man fan. I have Spider-Man 2 from 2004. So this is by most people's accounts the best of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. The third one is terrible. The first one's pretty good. Actually, the third one has good moments. The third one is just
the third one as much as some people. I'll be completely honest.
I hate it once they involve Venom.
There's too much shit going on. That is true.
It is way too. There's way too much. They're trying to fit too many villains. They wanted to do the Sinister Six, and they could only. Clearly they were trying to set up the Sinister Six, and they just didn't have the budget to do it.
I would have been fine with just Harry as the villain there.
There was like 3 villains in that movie. It was pretty brutal. But anyway, that aside, Doc Ock was a great villain. And the CGI doesn't hold up as well, but still one of the greatest movie moments, I think, Spider-Man movie moments, or just comic book movie moments, is when Spider-Man has just saved everybody on the train and his mask is all torn to shreds and they can see who his identity is. And they could reveal it to the world because that's all Doc Ock wants, is to know who he is so he can kill him, basically. Yeah. In most iterations of Doc Ock, that's why it's such an important scene in that movie for those of you who don't know. And they all just choose to, because he saved their lives, not say anything. And I know it's a corny moment, but to me, that is one of the greatest movie moments I saw when I was younger. And I was like, dude, this is why would they not reveal his identity? They know the greatest secret, like in all of New York, except maybe some other stuff. But it was, I just talking about it brings back me, it gets me chills because this movie was so great, so at number 6, Charlie, what you got rocking on your list?
Number 6, we are back in the MCU. This is done by my favorite director, not even just in the MCU, but one of my favorite directors at all right now.
Oh, I think I know what this
Taika
is.
Waititi, Thor Ragnarok. Korg and Meek could be a reason for this being number 6 alone. First of all, second of all, the way they reinvented Thor here, there's nothing like it. Because Thor 1 and Thor 2, I mean, they're fine movies, but they both got some. They're not as good as this, to say the least. And Thor's character is just not as good as he is in this. And the way they did with Hulk, and how they brought in Valkyrie, Jeff Goldblum as the Grand Master. I mean, there is so much love about this movie, and we just recently watched this again, and it just reminded me so much again of how much I enjoy this movie.
Yeah, sorry if I got a little glitchy there. I'm still here, but yeah. So number 5 on your list, Charlie.
Number 5. All right, we are back to DC. In 2008 film directed by Christopher Nolan, Batman: The Dark Knight. I mean, Heath Ledger as the Joker.
That is a low ranking for that movie, my friend.
Hey, that's fair. It's good to know.
That is
Heath
tough.
Ledger as the Joker, Christian Bale. I was never the biggest fan of the Batman series, but this one to me was the movie that stood out. So, and just when you go back and look, and a part that's not talked about as much is Aaron Eckhart's performance as Harvey Dent.
Oh yeah, honestly, this movie does what movies like what was it we were talking about that had too many villains? Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 and The Dark Knight have the same amount of villains, yet one of them works and the other one doesn't. You know, like
that's the difference between Christopher Nolan right there.
Actually, there might be a few more in Spider-Man 3, but like the main ones they try and introduce in both, there's about the same amount, and they do. Granted, Scarecrow is completely useless, but you can make that argument. But like either way. Also, Cillian Murphy, who will be in the upcoming A Quiet Place 2, plays Scarecrow in those movies, just in case you didn't know. But yeah, side movie fact.
We're hitting the top 5 now. I mean, all of these are great movies.
This one, I don't know. My number 5 might actually be a hot take. It might actually
Let's
be.
hear it.
So at number 5 on my list, we're going all the way back. X-Men from 2000.
Okay.
So this to me by the way, was the first comic book movie I ever saw. Like straight up, like I saw this back in 2002, probably. I'm guessing a couple of years after it had come out, because you didn't really see movies necessarily the year they came out when I was younger, but because you didn't always have the money to. And I remember seeing this and being like, "Whoa, this is what comic books are. Why have I not been reading these for years?"
Instantly hooks you, right?
Yeah, especially I fell in love with the character of Wolverine. He was probably my first favorite comic book character before like the MCU came around and I had a bunch. But like the only one that I really identified with out of the movie was Logan. Beyond that, I mean, Professor Xavier is just a really weird concept to try and wrap your mind around when you're a kid, you know? So like, yeah. So, but I think it honestly, we don't have most of the comic book movies we have now if this movie doesn't try and do what it does.
Oh, X-Men did.
It was between this and the Fantastic Four from 2003 or 4, something like that.
I think, yeah.
Is it 7? So in the early 2000s, first Fantastic Four movie, because they both, for me, do the same thing for the genre. Like a lot of the things those movies do, you're still seeing in comic book movies to this day. Completely tropes and everything. I mean, the opening scene of Fantastic Four is basically the same opening scene as Dark Phoenix, you know? So it's like, it's not like you can't do what they do in that movie. But anyway, at number 4 on my list, I have Shazam. So
hey.
This movie hit for me. I told you that when we saw it. This to me was everything I wanted out of it and more, and then some. And some people have talked about Zachary Levi's performance in the aftermath, and to me, it doesn't really matter. I still haven't revisited this movie. I don't need to. I know I'm going to love this movie every time I watch it, so I'm saving those times for when I'm like really sad and I need to pick me up.
That's one of those movies that if someone hasn't seen it, I would love to show them.
I would love to do a watch along for Shazam for our fans that haven't seen it. If we could do that, if we had fans that wanted to do that, but you know, like. If you guys would be interested in that, leave comments. We'll do live watch-alongs right now if you'd like to. So, because we have like, I personally have nothing to do when I'm not working, and you know, so like, I'm bored out of my mind. So, you know, talking this stuff with you guys would be fun. But yeah, Shazam, we already talked about it, so I won't go on too much about it. But what hit so well for me was they got the lore correct, and this was the first super accurate to the lore I've ever seen a comic movie really come. All the MCU is a changed, slightly edited version of it, so they can put it on the screen, which is fine. But this movie just hits every beat and does it and tries to do some things that it's on its own that are cool, and that's fine too. And it's got one of the coolest ending sequences to a comic book movie you're ever gonna see. So, Shazam, yeah.
Shazam.
So number 4 on your list.
Number 4, we are back to the MCU, and this is my number 1 rated MCU movie.
Oh boy.
Avengers: Infinity War.
Okay.
To me, this was it. Really, what I don't have enough words for this movie.
Before you go on, let me just say this so I can shock the whole fan group. There's not a single Avengers movie on my list.
That's fine. And I almost didn't put it on, but then I really thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I have to put this movie up high too, because I just love this movie so much. This is what, obviously it was all leading to. You get Thanos. I mean, seeing how much of a badass Thanos is. I mean, dude.
So how I talked about how
nothing
X-Men
like it,
and Fantastic Four were kind of competing for that number 5 spot. Also, Avengers from 2012 was also competing for that for the same reasons, where everything finally comes together and you're like, they're never going to do all these characters in one movie for the same reasons that you're talking about, because it does that and it does it well. And wait, wasn't that movie directed by... Oh, wait, didn't he go to the DC? Oh, we can't talk about him. Anyway.
And just so much about that movie that I loved. And that is as of right now, when we're counting like top MCU movies, I usually don't factor in the Avengers. So I usually just say it is Thor Ragnarok. But I have to factor in the Avengers for this. So it is my number 4.
All right. So number 3. Number 3 on my list is this. To me, I haven't seen a lot of comic book movies that made me want to rewatch them over and over again. And I still haven't really done that with this movie, just because, I don't know, sometimes when I watch a movie and I really enjoy it, watching it again, I notice things that I wouldn't have noticed if I just lived in the moment of the movie. So that's why I haven't gone back and watched more. The only ones I've really gone back and watched are the ones when I was trying to theorize. So like Infinity War, Endgame, all those kinds of things. I'll rewatch those just as, theory bait. But Wonder Woman is, to me, one of the, if not the, and I still stand by it's the top, like, solo outing the DC released up until Shazam came out. Because Shazam hits all the beats of a comic book movie in a way that DC never did. But Wonder Woman is the first step toward all of that. Like I was saying, it doesn't fix the problems of the DCEU, but it makes them quite apparent, because all the things that they do right in the first 2/3 of the movie make you really enjoy it. And then that third act that I always talk about, where it kind of falls apart and it just devolves into fighting another big gray villain, as people have said on the internet, which is fine. You can have that in your comic book movie. I mean, there's 3 Iron Man movies where that's literally the same villain every time. Businessman in a suit.
People are only having Chris Pine.
And Chris Pine, I thought his performance was going to be super awkward in this movie. Like, I thought, there's no way this guy, he looks like him, but there's no way based on his acting performances that I've seen that he does this. He's Captain Kirk. He's not. No, he's not. No, but he actually, he's way more versatile actor than I give Chris Pine credit for. Obviously, he's famous and he makes millions of dollars to make a movie, so I guess I should have known better. But that aside. Wonder Woman, yeah, I don't think I need to say more about it. It's one of my favorite movies for a reason. So number 3 on your list, Charlie.
Number 3 is a movie we had already touched. You know me, I'm a Spider-Man guy. Spider-Man 2.
Okay, I'm not mad about that placement.
Sam Raimi. Again, this was for the longest time my favorite comic book movie. It was for a very long time my favorite one.
It's probably still in my top. Well, it is still in my top 10.
yeah. See, and I recently rewatched it again, because we were just talking about movies and whatnot, and I decided, fuck it, watch it again.
It holds up.
Did Doc Ock, and I was a big fan of James Franco as Harry. I can't even lie, like that was my.
I didn't even know who James Franco was back then, but I liked him as an actor.
I always feel like it was one of those things, like you see him and then next thing you know he's everywhere. Like I just remember him being everywhere. And J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Holy.
Spoilers for Spider-Man Far From Home. That was the greatest reference of all time. Sorry.
Oh, man. Absolutely. Hit us with your... So number 2 for you, Garrett.
Yeah, so... I don't think anybody that has heard me talk about comic book movies doesn't know what my top 2 are. but it should become pretty apparent which my number one is based on what I told you after I tell you what my number two is. So at number two on my list, I have The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight to me is one of two comic book movies that came out in the year 2008 that changed the genre forever. You went into how the villains in this movie are balanced so perfectly, and I made the joke about Scarecrow already, but to me, you don't get a better story about how Batman and the Joker kind of reflect each other. They're two sides of the same coin. That's why they show you Two-Face in this movie. It's a visual metaphor. It's all about how these characters interact with each other within the mediums that they exist, whether it's comedies, television. I don't know when I got cut off, but anyway, so whatever medium they're interacting in within comic books, movies, television, that whole thing. And, I think that there's never been a better character study on the Joker, except for maybe another movie, but other than the actual character study on the Joker, but but like that aside, you can't actually be better than the Joker in his own movie. I'm sorry. That's not how that works, Heath. Rest in peace, but you did your best. Okay. You did it in a movie that involved other characters that had to be written for, and you did a really good job. So you can say that.
Absolutely.
Whereas all Walking had to do was play against other famous actors. So no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, that aside, not that there weren't like 55 million famous actors in Dark Knight,
Oh God, yeah. Like we were just talking about it, going through the list. I mean, the fact that you have Christian.
Anyway,
Bale
that aside,
Batman, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have. So I was making the joke about A-list actors, but there's plenty in that movie as well. But
exactly.
plenty, and it's all my jokes aside, I really did enjoy this movie, and there's a lot of reasons why, and I can't pinpoint what it was that clicked with me about this movie. It's probably just Ledger's performance that just drew me in for most of the movie, because like the opening scene of the movie. Let's just talk about the opening scene that kind of encapsulates what makes the movie so great. So you have all these dudes in clown masks, and you're like, oh, this is the Joker's crew, whatever. You see this in every movie, whatever, and then the Joker's crew. One of them starts just assassinating people, and you're like, wait, is that Batman? Like, what's going on here? And then you find out it's the Joker just piecing his people so that he could take all the money. And then you're like, well, I guess that's a very Joker move, but like, what? And you don't understand why he's doing what he's doing. But then as the movie goes on and on throughout the rest of the movie, you start to understand that he's not doing it for a reason. He's just doing it to cause chaos. Like a bank was robbed and 90% of the crew was killed. Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. It's very true.
Did he hire mercenaries? Were that his actual crew? Is that why he solos pretty much the rest of the movie? And does he even need them because he basically takes on Batman on his own? Like, what? What is going on? He basically has supernatural powers in this movie. Yeah, I don't need to go into more. So, Charlie, who do you got at number 2 on your list?
Number 2 is Joaquin Phoenix himself, Joker.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies from last year. I loved it so much. And this... There's so much about this movie to fall in love with, whether it's the story, whether it's the acting, whether it's the atmosphere, whether it's the you get what you fucking is, Like,
exactly. Spoilers, but yeah.
About this movie that you really you fall in love with.
Absolutely.
And another thing about it, I mean, Zazie beats in this movie. I mean,
yeah.
The mind. Like there's twists, there's turns, you name it.
That's the best part about a story with like an untrustworthy narrator. You don't really know if any of what you're seeing is true. And that's why the end of the movie is so ambiguous, because they want you to like, wait, what was any of this real?
Directed by Todd Phillips. I didn't say that before, but
oh, of course. I didn't list off every director. You're fine.
This was my second favorite movie of 2019, and for that to be a comic book movie in the 2019 is such a great year of film. I really think in a few years we're gonna look back at 2019 and be like, holy,
I think these two movies that we both have just The Dark Knight, and I think if you take The Dark Knight and you take Joker and you examine why they worked so well, it's because even though they're comic book properties, the directors are super experienced, and I think some of the greatest directors are just the greatest communicators with the actors that they're trying to what they're trying to portray. Because you can write a great script and get a horrible movie. Because on paper it looks great, but if you can't get them to understand what you're actually going for in that scene, the movie's going to look. I mean, it's going to be incoherent. The performances are going to be questioned, things like that.
And Another
And
thing
both of
about
these
it.
directors, Phillips and Nolan, seem to understand that, and they're great communicators, and they can portray, they can get what the dynamic they want the character to have is of that being the Joker.
Something I didn't add that really brings this movie full circle and together as a whole is the music. I mean, oh
Yes.
my, the music of this film is nuts. Like you get the eerie vibes, whether it's he's doing this or he's doing that, and it just there's nothing like it. So, Garrett, take us
Yeah.
home. What is your number one comic book film?
So spoilers, it's not the Joker. I really enjoyed that movie. It did not make my top 10. Let me just explain the criteria I used for my list. I wanted to use a very specific criteria. That way I couldn't just pick the movies that I enjoyed the most recently, because that would have been my entire list. Like my first list was just the 10 most recent movies I'd seen that were comic book movies. And I was like, that's not fair, because just because I remember the most about these doesn't mean they should be on my list. So that's why I included
Yeah.
a lot of older movies and movies that have nothing to do with each other, because they're just better
Oh yeah,
movies.
you went way back
Um,
to 2000, and we hit 2004, and
yeah. And now I'm staying in the same year this time, and I'm going with Iron Man from 2008. So I talked about my top two being two comic book movies from the same year that changed everything really for comic book movies. There was not a comic book movie like we have until Iron Man. You don't have 90% of the movies we have on this list if you don't have Iron Man.
absolutely.
And I there's plenty of okay, so hold on one second. All right, sorry, the cat was being annoying. But anyway, the podcat. Maybe I should get the cat for the camera. But anyway,
Podcast.
anyway, no, but I just really enjoyed. Like I remember hearing that they were going to do an Iron Man movie, and like having watched the
Yeah.
Avengers cartoon as a kid, I was like, why would you give such a minor character a solo movie? Like what? He's like the second in command to Captain America most of the time. Like what? Okay, sure. Like it's not Iron Man that lives on the Avengers jet. It's Captain America, whatever. But I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm in. I'm interested. I also had heard
Why
of Thor.
him? Yeah.
I also had heard of Thor. I was like, I didn't know that was a Marvel character, but that's pretty cool. Norse mythology is pretty rad. Maybe they'll do something cool with it. And then Marvel did some really cool stuff with it in the comics. And then obviously everyone's heard of Captain America, even if you don't know who that is. I knew the name when I heard it. I was like, yeah, why is that?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about that now?
Shout out the Winter Soldier. Didn't make the list, but oh my, I love that movie.
But
Or not the Winter Soldier. Not the Winter Soldier. His first one.
my back. Oh, I'm sorry. What was the question?
I was saying, I messed up. I messed it up. I was saying, shout out Captain America with his first movie. It didn't make the list, but I love that movie. I've rewatched it so many times.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's actually people say that
Avenger,
movie.
right?
Yeah, it's called Captain America: The First Avenger. People like
Yep.
crap on that movie because the script isn't that strong, but like to me, they were trying to get the vibes of Indiana Jones and like
Well, I
World
can
War
see
II
that.
movie, and I get and like when you tell people that, they're like, yeah, I get that, but
Yeah.
it's not perfect. But it's also it's based in the 40s. Like, what are you gonna do? It's gonna have to be cheesy at some point. You're gonna have to be weird about it. Like it's not. It was never gonna be the other MCU movies.
Have to be
But
weird about it. I like that.
yeah, but either way, and like so I knew a lot of these characters, but I had no idea they were gonna do an Iron Man movie. So I was like, okay, I'm in. And then it blew me out of the water. I was like, if this is how every movie is, I will see all 28 movies that maybe come out in this franchise. Yep, I knew back then. No, but really, like. But jokes aside, like that is I didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and to be honest, I don't know how anyone could have it. To me, if you don't have like in your top five The Dark Knight and Iron Man, you haven't been paying attention, like because they're so essential. Like again, you don't have
Absolutely.
you like okay, so like what works for so many of these movies that we have on our list. I could just bring up like you could have never have gotten someone trying to do something in the genre like Captain America: The Winter Soldier going out of the genre of comic book, unless you had Iron Man, which is it's almost a genreless movie. Besides it's still in that comic book genre because it's still I don't even know how to explain it. It broke the mold and then made a new one, and then it has expanded ever since. And that's how you get movies like Guardians, Captain America 2 and 3, and Avengers eventually. Like it's just so crazy how essential this was. And if this one little movie didn't go right, none of the rest of it happens. And DC probably doesn't even take a shot at this. More than likely, So Yeah.
So I
Pop
find
crop.
this.
Yeah. And let's just make can I just acknowledge something? We talked about Spider-Man from 2004 and X-Men from 2000. You know Kevin Feige was involved with those movies then too, right?
Hey, what a guy! Can't I
He's
mean,
been like the background of all of the Marvel movies that have been made in like the last 20 years. It's ridiculous.
and now it's his quest to bring those groups together.
Indeed.
Do it.
Do it. All right,
So
number one on your list. I've been rambling for too long, Charlie. Let's get yours.
Okay. Something I like. Your number one was not on my list, and my number one was not on your list.
Okay.
I think that's just so cool about all comic book movies. When we made this list, this is the first movie I was like, I has to be number one. This is my favorite. It has been since the day I saw it, and that's not an exaggeration. 2016, Deadpool.
Oh, I can
Deadpool
see that.
to
I could
me-
totally see that.
Deadpool just, I kind of faded out of the comic movies for a little bit there. But when I saw Deadpool in theaters in 2016, I was blown away. To me,
Yeah.
Tim Miller and what Ryan Reynolds does as Deadpool, I love it so much.
He was made to play the character.
I didn't intentionally do this, but I just noticed my top two movies are R-rated. I did not notice that.
Huh.
So
Go figure.
just a nice but anyways, I was gonna say Deadpool to me, there's just so much stuff about it, and even like the X-Men stuff at the time, which I didn't completely understand at all. Like I really didn't know that he was associated with X-Men at all in any form. And then learn more about it here and there. Deadpool 2 comes out. Again, I could have put Deadpool 2 on this list, but I felt like, I was like, we'll sub it out. Just like Iron Man, I easily could have put that on here. Kind of subbed it out for one thing or the other. And then but yeah. So I just I thought that was so funny that both of our number ones didn't make either's list.
So yeah, like I really enjoy both of our lists. I like how different they are. I like how some of us I like how one of us had something at like 7 or 8 and the other person had that in like their top 5. Like that was cool. And like you and me having completely different number ones, I didn't expect because no, that's not true. When I had number one, because my initial list I had Dark Knight number 1. I expected that to be both of ours. And then when I heard yours go super early, I was like, wow, okay. Like maybe I should rethink this. Like maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way, and I maybe overthought it a little bit. But I, genuinely and I want to hear what you guys have to sound off in the comments. Put your lists down below. Maybe you'll have 10 completely obscure movies we've never heard of. Or maybe you'll have the same list as one of us, or a similar list to one of us, or maybe you'll have a completely different list, like I said, that we've never heard of. So put those in the comments below.
Someone might have they might have Kick-Ass at number 1.
I thought about putting it on the list. I was like, does this deserve it?
Too.
I was like, does this change? Is this because with Kick-Ass you can make the argument without Kick-Ass you never get Deadpool.
It was
right. Theoretically,
like an original,
you can make that argument. You can't. There's no one that's saying that they saw Kick-Ass and said, oh, now we can do Deadpool, because clearly there was 10 years after that where they didn't. But like, at the same time,
kicked ass in that movie. Pun intended.
Yes, and so did Chloe Grace Moretz. That's her, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of even more actors that are famous. Who was the lead in that movie? Who played the lead?
I have no idea.
Was he some unknown? I can't even remember. But that was. If you haven't seen those, you don't have to see the second one, but go back and watch Kick-Ass if you haven't. That's a good underrated movie you should watch. But yeah. But that aside, like I said, leave your list in the comments below, and thank you guys for tuning in if you're this far into the video, and make sure you hit the bell so you know when we go live, and make sure you also hit subscribe. I did not intend to rhyme there. Let's go. And but it worked out. So, but either way, we'll see you guys next time.